Hello, and welcome to another episode of This, That, and the Other. Like I've said in previous shows, I I originally was looking for a co-host. I would still like to have a co-host, maybe somebody who would come on and do some shows with me, discuss subjects. Not every show, just occasionally, or somebody wants to guest co-host one time about a certain subject. Just let me know on my Facebook page. Send me a message. Let me know. I also want to get more interviews. I've only done one so far with a woman last year from West Virginia that owned a movie theater. I'd like to get more of these interviews together, and anybody has an interesting subject to discuss, somebody that I might be able to interview that would be willing to go on camera. That's one of the problems. I've had ideas, but people are afraid to go on camera. But anyway, anybody that's willing to go on camera to discuss any kind of subject, somebody, let me know. Or if you yourself want to go on there and discuss something with me, let me know. I mean, I'm willing to travel to put this interview together. But all I have to do is meet you somewhere and bring the camera. I'm willing to go. And if it's a good enough subject, I'm willing to drive as far as 5 hours away. I live in Northern Virginia, but would like to get more of those together. And like I said, please, somebody come forward. Let me give me ideas. I'm waiting for them. All right, it's football season, and so I'm kind of gotten on this kick of discussing various football history right now, and this one's no different. I was discussing some things about the USFL the last time, and well, I'm going to be discussing USFL history again. This time, I'm going to be discussing a football team called the Arizona Wranglers. They were in the league from '83 and '84, and then they became the Arizona Outlaws in 1985. But the Arizona Wranglers, it's kind of an interesting. This beginning part's complicated as to how this team came about. And originally, when the USFL was formed, um, Alex Spanos, who owns the Chargers, um, was going to locate a franchise in Los Angeles, and he but ended up not doing it. Ended up buying a minority stake in the San Diego Chargers instead. Um, Jim Joseph and Ted Taub, both owners in the USFL, were both interested in the Los Angeles market. Um, I believe they were from like the Oakland area, and so Jim Joseph and Ted Taub flipped the coin to see who would pursue ownership of the Los Angeles market, and Joseph won the coin toss. So Ted Taub pursued the Oakland Invaders and was owner of that team. Um, Unfortunately, the USFL officials kind of pushed Jim Joseph away from being owner of a Los Angeles franchise. They were interested in these two men who actually were trying to put together an expansion team in San Diego, but could not get a lease on the San Diego stadium where the Chargers played. And these men were involved in the cable industry, and Bill Daniels and Alan Harmon and the USFL officials felt that they would be more suited for the LA market. So those two became the owners of the Los Angeles Express, and Joseph ended up moving the team that he was planning to put together, to Phoenix. He tried to be strict about this player's salaries, tried to really um, stick with the budget, and he brought in some quality young players, but the starter he had very few quality starters on the team, and even less depth. So he really didn't have a great team put together. His quarterback was Alan Risher, from I believe drafted from LSU, if memory serves me right on that. And the ticket sales were average to what a lot of the USFL teams' ticket sales were less than expected. The team started out 4-4. They had hired Doug Shively to coach the first year. I believe he had been an assistant with the Atlanta Falcons, and started out 4-4. were competing for the being first in the division. Then they went on a 10-game skid. They lost the last 10 games, and they ended up being 4-10. They were tied for the worst record in the league, along with the 1983 Washington Federals. The team had a weak defense. The defense gave up 442 points, and the Wranglers only scored more than 23 points in one game. As a matter of fact, the second game they hosted the Arizona Wranglers. Or I'm sorry, I mean they Arizona Wranglers hosted the Chicago Blitz, a heavily favored team. The Wranglers came back and won the game 24-23 on an upset. The week before, I believe the Wranglers had lost to the Oakland Invaders 24-0. I believe that's right, if memory serves me right on that. At the end of the season, well, they ended up 4-12 at the end of the season, but they played 6 of their home games early in the season because of the heat in Arizona, and only 3 home games towards the end of the season. So they ended up playing a lot of away games. That might have been a contributing factor to them losing 10 in a row as well. Jim Joseph lost millions of dollars and was disappointed in the attendance. The Chicago Blitz owner was Dr. Ted Dietrich, a Phoenix heart surgeon who owned the Chicago franchise, and Jim Joseph wanted to sell the team, and Ted Dietrich looked at it as an opportunity to acquire a team close to where his home was. So he was interested in the Arizona Wranglers, and so he was also disappointed. Ted Dietrich was also disappointed with the fact that the Blitz had a lackluster attendance. They had a good football team in '83. They made it to the playoffs. They had like a 3-touchdown lead on the Philadelphia Stars, and Stars came back and won it. But they had some good players on that football team. So anyway, I'm trying to explain what all happened. He swapped the Chicago franchise for the Arizona franchise and bought the Arizona Wranglers from Jim Joseph. And a Milwaukee heart surgeon, James Hoffman, bought the Chicago Blitz from Dr. Ted Dietrich. And the assets were swapped for the most part, too. Most of the players that were on the Blitz went to the Arizona Wranglers and vice versa. One of the exceptions was Alan Risher, that was the starter for the Wranglers, stayed on with the Wranglers and was a backup to Greg Landry, who had quarterbacked the Blitz the year before. Interesting thing about James Hoffman, that owned the Chicago Blitz, he pulled out of owning the team before a game was even played. From what I understand, he invested a lot of money in some players, and I guess he saw how much money he was losing in it. He just bailed out. Eddie Einhorn was awarded a replacement franchise for the Blitz, but never happened. That game was never played. And the Wranglers ended up with a 10-8 season, much better than the year before. They upset the Houston Gamblers, and then they beat the LA Express in the championship round for their conference championship, and then they lost in the championship, USFL championship, to the Philadelphia Stars. The Wranglers wanted to change their jersey color from blue to red, and according to USFL rules, they couldn't make that. They had to wait a year to make that change. So, from what I understand, I think that whole year, the Arizona Wranglers wore white jerseys the whole season. I don't think they wore any colored jerseys at all. They had blue in the first year, but I believe they wore white the whole year. 1985 season, Dr. Ted Dietrich was disappointed with the attendance, and their average attendance for the Wranglers' average attendance was 25,568, and he wanted to sell a team, so he sold to William Tatham, who actually him and his son were from San Diego. They originally also tried to start a franchise in San Diego, but ran into the same problems that um, the Bill Daniels and Alan Harmon ran into. They couldn't secure a lease on the Charger Stadium, so they ended up putting the team in Oklahoma, and I believe it's Tulsa, Oklahoma, if I'm not mistaken. They were called the Oklahoma Outlaws, and their quarterback was Doug Williams. I remember that. That's about the only star player I remember being on the Outlaws football team. But they Tatham bought the team from Ted Dietrich, and then also moved what he had in Oklahoma over to Arizona as well. And most of the players came. He basically, I guess, merged what he had in Oklahoma with what he had in Arizona. I remember the Outlaws uniforms. They were like black helmet, black jerseys, black pants, all black all the way down. Had a picture of White Outlaw on the helmet. And the Oklahoma Outlaws were coached by Frank Kush. That's who coached the Outlaws. I year before, when they were in Oklahoma, they were coached by Woody Weidenhofer. Later became a coach at University. He had been a Pittsburgh Steelers assistant, and he later became a head coach of University of Missouri, and then later on, I believe Vanderbilt, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, those were the Frank Kush, for some reason, was brought on as coach of the Outlaws. I'm not sure what happened to George Allen after that. I'd have to do more research to find that out. But what happened to him after the Outlaws moved to Arizona? But that's basically the history of the Arizona Wranglers. What I was able to find on Wikipedia about them, and like I said, I really enjoyed the 3 years that league existed. And like I had said before on the other show, other leagues have tried to challenge the NFL, but it never works. And as always, thanks for watching.